So I am still discovering new things about Hogwarts Legacy despite being long done with its content, and I will admit some of these I kinda wished I knew sooner before I first played it. That's why today we're going to take a look at 12 more tips and tricks that you should definitely know, so let's dive right in. But starting things off, if you've been looking for a 100% completion on all of the side quests and you've been stuck since forever on 31 out of 32 for the final challenge tier, it's most likely because of the mission called Well. You find this just further down the road from Arrynshire around this small forest area on the hillside. This is probably the most obscure one, as you will need to literally be in this zone and drop by this random well for the quest to even pop up. Luckily, once you're close to it, it will give you a map of a strange tree that you need to find in a remote castle ruin. This area, by the way, it's speaking of, is just south of Arendelle, right here on this side of the map, after the massive waterfall in the zone around this castle at the edge of this cliff. Once you're here, you can quickly cast Levioso on the tree if you didn't get the hint, and now you're done with the quest. This will also give you the final piece of the leprechaun skin suit, and I will admit, it looks kinda nice, very Tom Ridley and all. Now, if you've been playing for long enough, chances are that you probably started hating the Alohamora minigame, since you have to complete it literally every time there's a locked door to open. Well, there's a way to auto-solve this, which you can easily do by just turning your difficulty setting all the way down to story mode. This will now give you a brand new button prompt to deal with the puzzle right away automatically and go directly into collecting your loot. I suggest doing so whenever you're going to dedicate just a few minutes to starting up a loot farm, and do keep in mind that you're still going to need the Alohamora level unlocks for this to work. So no, this trick will not work if you don't get the necessary demiguise statues for Mr. Moon, who does teach you the advanced versions of this spell. At number 3, speaking of making things easier, this will also remove the creature capture minigame, so now when you pull out your bag, creatures automatically get captured no matter the size. This means you no longer have to worry too much about slowing them down with Levioso, for example, but that can still totally be a very useful, well, tool to capture an entire nest if you want to. And you'll probably want to do that because creatures sell for 120 gold each at the Beast Vendor in Hogsmeade, so this is going to be by far the best way to earn money quickly out of all methods in Hogwarts Legacy. The best way is of course to find dens with smaller creatures such as mooncalves, neasels or nifflers, since they tend to spawn at least 5 or 6 in one single den, so that means at least 700 gold from just one of these. And speaking of making gold, at number 4, don't sell your unused loot at the regular vendors, especially if you're a PS5 user. As part of your PS5 package, if you finish the exclusive mission and unlocked your own shop in Hogsmeade at the end of it, then you should know your own shop has much better selling prices when selling your own loot. Well, 10% better, but it still totally adds up, and it can definitely make a huge impact for a full inventory. For example, a legendary piece sells for 200 gold on all other vendors, but at yours it sells for 220. And the same goes with pretty much all other rarities as well. At number 5, another big mistake I was doing was constantly saving up on legendary chests, thinking that they would become a lot more important in the endgame, so I restricted myself from acquiring a lot of legendary loot in fear of wasting it. But in reality, I finished the main story at around level 32, and to be honest, I should have not deprived myself from all of the great legendaries that I could have acquired for free. The reason being is because the Wizardwear shop in Hogsmeade sells legendaries anyway, and all of its loot will constantly keep up with your own levels. So if you're closer to 40, you can just check this place out and likely buy at least half, if not a full set of legendaries right away. If you can because of limited items, I suggest just sleeping 4 or 5 times right next to the vendor, as this is going to make it completely refresh its stock, so in this case I was able to buy all the missing pieces. Of course, these will still cost 500 gold each, but that's not that much in the end game, and they also come in with no trades, which again won't be a problem either, since at that later of a stage you're going to want to run with your own specialized setup anyway. But since we mentioned loot chests at number 6, you should know that you can actually use Accio to bring many of the loot containers to you when they happen to be in the middle of an enemy pack or in inaccessible areas. Especially these loot bags right here, it's easiest if you just aim first to make sure you outline them and then bring them quickly at your feet by holding down the Accio button. If you also have Wingardium Leviosa unlocked, keeping it pressed should also auto switch from Accio to Leviosa, and make it even easier to grab these and bring back to you. Moving on to number 7, I'm not sure about you, but I like free stuff, and there's a couple of locations in Hogwarts Legacy that give you free items and plants every few days. One of them is the greenhouse that you find at the end of the hidden herbology corridor that you unlock through an early side mission at the Hogwarts school. You don't even need to go through the tunnel again unless this is the first time you complete it, so unless you haven't done that yet, you can just do it even quicker by heading directly to the greenhouse from the waypoint, this one right here next to the herbology classroom, and it's going to be right opposite of it. If you go inside, you will find 8 spawned tentaculi that you can grab every 2 or 3 in-game days, which means you probably don't ever have to waste time planting your own in the room of requirement. Also, another one is right here in Lolly's cellar back in Hogsmeade. This one similarly gives you a bunch of plants, in this case the very deadly cabbages, plus a few other plants and some loot that you can get after clearing out the respawning enemies. But coming up to number 8, let's make the Merlin trials a lot faster and easier. There's at least a couple of variants that you can complete much quicker, including the ones involving jumping puzzles and the ones where you have to attract a bunch of moths. So for the moth, you don't even have to grab them one by one using Lumos. Instead, you can actually go to all of the 3 distinctive groups and attract all of them at the same time with no problem. And then on your way back, you can just go to all of the stones and make this a lot quicker to complete. This will come in handy when they tend to be more spread out, as you don't have to keep going back and forth between these locations to complete them. Another one is for the jumping puzzles, some of which can be failed if you go on the same rock twice or fall on the ground for some reason. Instead, you can just use the broom and gently tap every single rock to complete the puzzle much faster. In fact, any puzzle that contains objectives in zones that do not prohibit flight can be completed this way, sometimes completely removing the need to unlock certain parts of it. And this also includes, by the way, ancient magic trials and not just the Merlin ones. At number 9, it took me dozens of hours until I realized that the audible ping that you hear during Revelio isn't there by accident, but actually something that will directionally indicate where the next field page or item is located towards. So when you spam the ability, you're going to usually hear a slight ping, kinda like this one. So the closer that page is to you, the more pronounced the ping will be, while the further it is, the more subdued and harder to hear will it become. And assuming that you don't have low quality speakers, you can constantly ping using Revelio and kinda use it as a sonar to direct yourself towards your next page. The ping is good enough to even indicate height, so if it's on a different level in the same building as you, generally speaking you will hear it sounding from above and so on. At number 10, a quick tip that will make navigation slightly easier is the fact that you can still mount your broom even when falling. It only works with the broom, however, not the other mounts, but when you jump from higher up cliffs or accidentally fall from them, you still have time to pull out your wheel menu with tab or L1 and then quickly bring up your broom to mount in mid-air. It saved me on a couple of occasions, but it's also a cool trick to pull off in case you want that. Moving on to number 11, if you did the mistake of choosing any other pitch for your character's voice other than the one in the middle, you might have ended up being disappointed by the very robotic and clearly buggy voice your character now has. Well, there's a quick fix for that, and you find it under the sound controls in your game settings right here. Here you're going to see the controller for the pitch once more, and you'll want to make sure you bring it right back into the middle to fix your character's voice. That is what worked for me, but if it doesn't for you, you can still control the slider until it sounds normal again. And speaking of annoying sounds, if you're sick of your character constantly repeating the same dialogues whenever you're in the same location, like for example when traveling to Hogsmeade, you can actually mute the voice line audio from the same settings menu as well. This will remove the annoying repeated dialogues, but do keep in mind that it will also mute all other character voice lines as well. So if you want a workaround for that, instead you can just perform any action right after a teleport, like casting any spell or doing a quick dodge, which will skip over that specific voice line. And finally, to number 12, if you play on the console, like for example the PS5, and are sick of the slow-moving menu navigation, then you should know that the touchpad can actually be used to more quickly move the cursor on your screen. It takes a bit of adjustment since it's much more sensitive than the thumbstick navigation, but once you do nail it down, it can quickly move between all of these menus almost as fast as on the PC. Plus, it makes scrolling a lot faster, and I suggest using your left thumb since you can then keep your right thumb on the X button to confirm these menus when you need to. And yeah, this is pretty much it when it comes to some of the other tips and tricks. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.